"That man took something from you, sir." The boy said it from the edge of the sidewalk, one hand gripping the strap of the bag he was holding, the other pressed flat against the front of his jacket to keep it closed where the zipper had stopped working 2 winters ago. He was 10 years old, dark brown skin, close-cropped hair that needed cutting, wearing a jacket 3 sizes too big. Dark green, synthetic, the kind that had been donated to the church thrift sale on Prentice Street and had probably belonged to a grown man before it belonged to anyone else. His jeans were too short at the ankle. His sneakers had a strip of silver duct tape across the left toe, where the sole had started to separate, and someone, probably him, had pressed it down carefully and smoothed out the edges so it would hold a little longer. His name was Caleb Osei, and he had been standing on the corner of Whitfield Avenue and 5th Street for the past 4 hours, holding a piece of cardboard that said, "Hungry" on one side and "Nothing" on the other. The man he was speaking to had just stepped out of a black town car. His name was Arthur Pembridge. He was 67 years old, the founder and chairman of Pembridge Capital, a private investment firm that had managed, over 40 years, to turn a modest inheritance into one of the largest privately held fortunes in the country. He was tall even now, with the particular posture of a man who had never learned to stoop because nothing in his life had ever required it. Silver hair, a dark wool coat that cost more than most people spent on rent, a walking cane with a brass handle that he carried more from habit than necessity. He had come from a lunch at the Alderton Club, which was 3 blocks north and which did not have a sign on the door because the people who were supposed to know about it already did. He had not noticed the man who walked past him on the steps. Caleb had. Caleb had noticed because noticing things was what kept you alive when you lived the way Caleb lived, in a single room above a dry cleaner's on Prentice Street with his grandmother, Eunice, who was 63 years old and whose knees had stopped cooperating fully 2 years ago, which meant that the things that needed doing outside the apartment, the groceries, the pharmacy, the bills paid in person at the utility office on Marsh Street, had become Caleb's things to do. He had been on the corner of Whitfield and 5th because the corner of Whitfield and 5th was, in his experience, the corner where the people who came out of the Alderton Club walked past on their way to their cars, and the people who came out of the Alderton Club were the kind of people who sometimes gave something to a boy on a corner if the boy was quiet and did not make them feel accused. He had seen the man in the gray coat come down the Alderton Club steps 2 beats behind Arthur Pembridge. He had seen the hand, quick, practiced, the specific economy of motion of someone who had done this many times and knew exactly how much movement was too much. He had seen the leather document case lifted from under Pembridge's arm in the half-second when Pembridge was reaching for the town car's door handle. He had seen the man in the gray coat turn left on 5th Street and begin to walk at the pace of a man who was not running because running would be noticed. He had made a decision in the time it took to breathe in. He had left his cardboard sign on the sidewalk. He had run. The man in the gray coat was fast for someone who was trying not to look fast. He moved with the controlled urgency of a person who knew exactly where he was going and was covering ground without appearing to. He turned left on 5th, then right on Calder, cutting through the edge of the financial district where the buildings were tall and the lunch crowd was thick enough to absorb a man moving quickly. Caleb was faster. He was 10 years old and he had been running these blocks his entire life, to the pharmacy on Marsh Street, to the school on Delaney, to the food bank on the corner of 9th that opened at 7 and ran out of the good bread by 7:45 if you weren't there early. He knew which corners had the longest lights. He knew which alley between Calder and 6th cut 30 seconds off the distance. He knew the loose paving stone outside the insurance office on the corner that caught people's feet if they weren't watching. He cut through the alley between Calder and 6th. He came out ahead of the man in the gray coat. He was standing on the pavement outside the insurance office when the man came around the corner, and the man saw him, and for a moment they looked at each other. A man in a gray coat with a stolen leather document case under his arm, and a 10-year-old boy in a jacket with a broken zipper and duct tape on his left shoe. The man made a calculation. The calculation was visible in his face. The specific arithmetic of a person deciding whether a child was a threat. He decided the answer was no. He was wrong. Caleb stepped directly into his path. "Give me the bag," he said. The man looked at him. He had a lean face, mid-40s, the kind of unremarkable features that were designed to be forgotten. He said, "Get out of the way, kid." "You took it from the man outside the Alderton Club," Caleb said. "I saw you. Give me the bag." The man looked at him for another half-second. Then he stepped around him and kept walking. Caleb grabbed the strap. What happened next was not elegant. It was a 10-year-old boy and a 40-year-old man in the middle of a sidewalk on Calder Street at 1:30 in the afternoon, with the man trying to pull the strap free and Caleb holding on with both hands and his feet planted, and the duct tape on his left shoe peeling back further with the effort. The man said something that Caleb did not register because he was focused entirely on his hands and the strap and keeping his feet from sliding on the pavement. Then the man let go. Not because Caleb had won, because two men in suits had come around the corner from 6th Street, and one of them was already on the phone and looking directly at the man in the gray coat with the expression of someone who had been looking for him. The man in the gray coat saw them. He released the strap. He turned and walked in the opposite direction, quickly, and then he was running, and the two men in suits were running after him, and Caleb was standing on the pavement on Calder Street, holding a leather document case in both hands, with the strap cutting into his palms and his left shoe's tape entirely detached and flapping at the toe. He looked at the document case. He looked at the direction Arthur Pembridge's town car had been parked. He walked back. Arthur Pembridge was still on the sidewalk outside the Alderton Club when Caleb came around the corner onto Whitfield Avenue. He was standing beside his town car with his driver, a large, quiet man named Davis, who had been driving Pembridge for 12 years, and a security consultant named Helen Marsh, who had materialized from somewhere Caleb had not seen and was currently on the phone with an expression of controlled urgency. Pembridge himself was standing very still, in the way that powerful men stood still when something had happened that they had not anticipated, not flustered, not agitated, but with the particular quality of stillness that came from a man who had spent 40 years making decisions and had just realized that a decision had been made without his input. He looked up when Caleb came around the corner. Caleb walked up to him and held out the document case. "That man took something from you, sir," he said. "I got it back." Pembridge looked at the document case. He looked at the boy holding it, the jacket 3 sizes too big, the jeans too short at the ankle, the sneaker with the duct tape now fully detached and the sole flapping. He looked at Caleb's hands, which were red at the palms from the strap. He took the document case. He held it for a moment, feeling the weight of it, the particular weight of something that had been gone and was now back. Then he looked at Caleb. "Who are you?" he said. "Caleb," Caleb said. "I was on the corner." He glanced toward where his cardboard sign was still lying on the pavement, face up, the word "hungry" visible from here. Pembridge followed his gaze. He looked at the sign. He looked at the boy. He looked at the sign again. "Did he hurt you?" Pembridge said. "No, sir." He let go. "There were 2 men, from your people, I think. They came around the corner." He paused. He ran. They ran after him. Helen Marsh lowered her phone. "2 of our team intercepted him on 6th Street, she said to Pembridge. "Police are on the way." Pembridge nodded once. He looked at Caleb. "Come here," he said. He said it the way he said most things, simply, without asking whether it was convenient. He led Caleb a few feet away from Davis and Helen Marsh and stood with him on the pavement in the afternoon light and said, quietly, "That was a dangerous thing to do." "Yes, sir," Caleb said. "You could have been hurt." "Yes, sir." "Why did you do it?" Caleb thought about the question. He looked at the document case in Pembridge's hand. "Because I saw it happen," he said. "And if you see something happen, and you can do something about it, you do something about it." He paused. "My grandmother says that. She says watching wrong happen and doing nothing makes you part of it." Pembridge looked at him for a long moment. "Your grandmother sounds like a wise woman." "She is, sir." "What's in the corner?" He nodded toward the cardboard sign. Caleb looked at it. I was asking for help," he said. He said it without apology and without shame, the way his grandmother had taught him to say true things. "We needed money for groceries. The pharmacy bill came, and there wasn't enough left." Pembridge was quiet for a moment. "How old are you, Caleb?" 10, sir." "Where do you live?" "Prentice Street, above the dry cleaners, with my grandmother." He paused. "She can't walk far anymore. Her knees." Pembridge nodded slowly. He opened the document case. Caleb looked away, not because he had been told to, but because whatever was inside was not his to see. He looked at the street, at the town car, at the two doormen at the top of the Alderton Club steps who were watching this conversation from a distance with the carefully neutral expressions of men who had decided not to have an opinion about it. "Caleb," Pembridge said. Caleb looked back. Pembridge had not removed anything from the case. He had looked inside and closed it again and was holding it at his side. His expression had changed. Something had moved in it that had not been there before. Something that arrived in the specific way things arrived when a man opened a case that had been stolen from him and confirmed that the thing inside it was still there. "I need to explain something to you," Pembridge said. He looked at the document case. "What's in here? It's not money, it's not jewelry, it's a document." He paused. "A document that took me 3 months to acquire, and that has my business partner's signature on it, and that, if it had been delivered to the wrong person, would have—" He stopped. He looked at Caleb. "It would have been very serious." Caleb looked at the case. "More serious than money?" "Much more serious than money," Pembridge said. He said it in a way that suggested he was aware of how strange that sounded to a 10-year-old boy who had been standing on a corner with a sign that said, "Hungry." "I know that's a difficult thing to explain." "I don't need it explained, sir," Caleb said. "My grandmother says some things are worth more than money. She says the things you've built and the people you've built them with, those are worth more." Pembridge looked at him. Something in the old man's face did something quiet and internal that he did not let out. "Yes," he said. "That's exactly right." The police arrived 11 minutes later. 2 officers in a cruiser, followed by Helen Marsh's security contact, who arrived in an unmarked car and spoke to the officers with the efficiency of someone who had an existing relationship with the department. The man in the gray coat had been detained on 6th Street. His name, Caleb would eventually learn, was Thomas Rain. He was a private investigator who had been hired, and the question of who had hired him and why they wanted the contents of Arthur Pembridge's document case was a question that would occupy several people for several weeks. But that was later. Right now, Caleb gave his account to one of the officers, a young woman named Vasquez, who wrote things down quickly and asked her questions in the practical, non-condescending way of someone who understood that a witness was a witness, regardless of age. She asked him what he had seen, in what order, with what level of certainty. He answered in the same order, with the same precision his grandmother had given him through 10 years of being asked to account for things. When he was done, Officer Vasquez looked at her notes. Then she looked at Caleb. "You grabbed the strap," she said, "even after he told you to get out of the way." "Yes, ma'am." "That was very brave." "My grandmother says brave just means you were scared, and you did it anyway," Caleb said. "I was scared." Vasquez looked at him for a moment. Then she wrote something in her notes that was not related to the case. Arthur Pembridge had been standing to the side during the police interview, speaking quietly with Helen Marsh. When the interview was finished and Vasquez moved away, he came back to where Caleb was standing. "I'd like to take you home," he said. Caleb looked at the town car, at Davis holding the rear door open, at the long dark car that was cleaner than anything on Prentice Street. "You don't have to do that, sir," he said. "I know I don't have to," Pembridge said. "I'd like to." Caleb thought about his grandmother, about the pharmacy bill, about the groceries, about the cardboard sign lying face up on the pavement. "My sign," he said. Pembridge looked at it. Then he looked at Davis, who was already walking toward it. Davis picked it up and brought it back, and folded it without any visible opinion about what was written on it, and held it under his arm. Caleb got in the car. He had never been in a car like this. He had been in his Aunt Miriam's Civic, which smelled of pine air freshener and had a crack in the rear seat that he had learned to sit to the left of. He had been in the school van once when the 3rd grade went to the science museum. He had been in the back of an ambulance when his grandmother fell in the kitchen 2 years ago, which was a memory he kept in a place he didn't visit often. He had not been in a car like this. The seat was wider than the couch at home. The leather was a dark, warm color that he couldn't name exactly. It was quiet inside, a different kind of quiet from the apartment, which was quiet because the neighborhood got tired at night. This was quiet because the car was built to be quiet, the outside world reduced to a soft suggestion beyond the tinted glass. Pembridge sat beside him. He did not look at his phone. He did not make calls. He looked out the window at the city moving past with the expression of a man seeing something he usually didn't look at. "Prentice Street," he said. "That's east of here." "About 20 minutes on the bus," Caleb said. 15 if you walk fast and get the light on Calder." Pembridge nodded. He said, "Tell me about your grandmother." Caleb looked at him. "Why?" "Because you've mentioned her 3 times in 30 minutes. That tells me something about her." Caleb looked at the window. The financial district was sliding behind them now, the tall glass towers giving way to shorter buildings, the wide, clean pavements narrowing, the shops changing character, less glass and brass, more painted metal shutters and handwritten signs in windows. "Her name is Eunice," he said. "She's been raising me since I was 4. My mother went to Atlanta for work, and she was supposed to come back." He said it the way he always said it, simply, without inflection, the fact of it long since processed into something that sat quietly in him. "She didn't come back." "I'm sorry," Pembridge said. "Grandma says you can be sorry about a thing and still be all right," Caleb said. "She says those aren't opposite." Pembridge looked at him. "She's right about that too." "She worked at the hospital for 21 years, Caleb said. "Laundry. She retired when her knees got bad. The pension is small." He said this the way he said all true things, without apology, without seeking anything from the telling. "We manage. She's good at managing. She knows which stores mark things down on which day, and she knows the woman at the food bank by name." He paused. "She knows the name of everyone she deals with. She says it costs nothing to know someone's name, and it means everything to the person whose name you know." Pembridge was quiet for a moment. Outside the window, a laundromat went past, Its window steamed from the inside, a woman visible through the steam folding something on a table. Then a hardware store. Then a corner shop with a handwritten sign, cold drinks / phone credit / lotto. "What's the pharmacy bill?" Pembridge said. Caleb looked at him. "You don't have to." "How much?" Caleb was quiet for a moment. $240. Her blood pressure medication. The insurance changed what it covers. Pembridge nodded. He did not say anything else about it. He looked back out the window. They rode in silence for a few minutes. Not an uncomfortable silence. The silence of two people in a car who have said real things and do not need to fill the space after real things with noise. "The document case," Caleb said. Pembridge looked at him. "The document. You said it was serious. More serious than money." He paused. "Is it all right, now that you have it back?" Pembridge looked at the case, which was on the seat on his other side. "Yes," he said. "Now that I have it back, it's all right." "What is it?" Pembridge considered the question. Then he said, "An agreement. Between me and a man I've worked with for a long time. It settles something that has been unsettled between us for many years." He paused. If it had reached the wrong person, they would have used it to damage that relationship beyond repair. He looked at the window. "He and I have had our difficulties. We have had years of them. But he is an honest man, and I am not interested in destroying honest men." He paused again. "The person who sent Rainey, Thomas Rain, the man in the gray coat, they are very interested in destroying him. And in the confusion of that destruction, they would have taken several things from me as well." Caleb absorbed this. "So it was an attack on both of you." Pembridge looked at him. "Yes," he said. "That's exactly what it was." "Who sent him?" "That," Pembridge said, "is the question my lawyers and several other people are currently working on." He looked at the document case. "The answer is in here, partly. The document contains information that certain people would rather not have surface. The fact that they tried to steal it tells me a great deal about who those certain people are." Caleb looked at the case. "Then me getting it back didn't just help you," he said. "It helped the other man too, the one you've had difficulties with." Pembridge looked at him for a long moment. "Yes," he said. "It did." "Does he know?" "Not yet." Caleb nodded slowly. He looked out the window. Prentice Street was visible now, the dry cleaner's sign in orange lettering, the narrow building above it with its 3 floors, and its staircase that smelled of the cleaning chemicals from below. His grandmother's building, his home. "This is it," he said. Davis pulled to the curb. Eunice Osei was in the kitchen when Caleb came up the stairs. He could hear the particular sound of her moving, the slow, careful rhythm of a woman who had learned to manage stairs and kitchen floors, and the distance between the counter and the table with the economy of someone for whom every step was a negotiation. She was making tea. She made tea at this time every afternoon, the same way she made it every afternoon. 2 bags, 3 minutes, a spoonful of honey that she bought from the market on Delaney, because the man who sold it had been selling honey at that market for 22 years, and his name was Victor, and she knew it. She turned when Caleb came through the kitchen door. She looked at him. She looked at the duct tape on his shoe, now fully detached. She looked at the redness at his palms. She looked at his face. "What happened?" she said. He sat down at the kitchen table, the small table with the yellow plastic surface, and the leg that had been repaired twice with a bolt they had found in the bottom of the toolbox. He told her. He told her from the beginning, in the order it happened, the way she had taught him, not the exciting parts first, but the order, because the order was how you understood a thing. She listened. She did not interrupt. She stood with her tea, one hand on the counter for balance, and she listened to the whole thing. When he finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "He offered to take you home?" "Yes, ma'am." "And you got in the car?" "Yes, ma'am." She looked at him. "You don't know that man." "I know he's Arthur Pembridge," Caleb said. "I know he comes out of the Alderton Club every Thursday. I know Davis has been his driver for 12 years, because Davis told me when we were waiting for the police. I know his security person is named Helen Marsh." He paused. "And I know he didn't touch the document case in the car until I asked about it. He could have opened it the moment he got it back." He waited. Eunice looked at her grandson. She had the specific expression she had when he said something that told her something about who he was becoming. Not surprised, because she had been watching him become it, but present with it, registering it fully. "That tells you something," she said. "It tells me he understood that opening it in front of me would have been using the moment for himself," Caleb said. "He waited until it was private." Eunice nodded slowly. She turned back to her tea. She added the honey. She stirred it once. "The pharmacy bill," she said. It was not a question. "I told him," Caleb said. "He asked how much. I told him. He didn't say anything after that." Eunice was quiet for a moment. "You didn't ask him for it?" "No, ma'am." "He asked you?" "Yes, ma'am." She nodded again. She carried her tea to the table and sat down across from him slowly, one hand on the table's edge for balance. She looked at his palms. "They hurt?" she said. "A little." She got up again, slowly, carefully, and came back with a damp cloth and held his hands and pressed the cloth to his palms the way she had pressed cloths to his knees and elbows for 10 years. The specific practiced care of a woman who had been tending to small injuries for a very long time. "You did a brave thing," she said. "I was scared," he said. "I know," she said. "That's what brave means." Arthur Pembridge called the following morning. Caleb answered because his grandmother's knees made getting to the phone quickly difficult, and Caleb had learned to answer when he was nearby. He had not expected the voice on the other end, the specific measured voice of a man who chose his words before he said them. "Caleb," Pembridge said, "is your grandmother available?" "Yes, sir. One moment." He gave the phone to Eunice, who was at the kitchen table with her morning tea. She took it with the calm of a woman who had answered unexpected calls for 63 years and had learned that the only way to find out what a call contained was to listen. Caleb listened from his side of the table. He heard his grandmother say yes several times. He heard her say, "That's very kind." He heard her say, "I'll ask him," and then she looked at Caleb and said, "Pembridge wants to meet us both this afternoon, if we're available," and Caleb said yes, and she said yes into the phone. When she put the phone down, she looked at it for a moment, and then looked at Caleb. "He said he's spoken to the pharmacy," she said. Caleb was quiet. "The bill is settled," she said. "He said it's taken care of." She looked at her tea. "He also said there are some other things he'd like to discuss in person." She looked up at Caleb. "He said that's entirely up to us, and there's no obligation." Caleb thought about the car, about the document case on the seat, about Pembridge not opening it until he asked. "He means it," Caleb said. "The no obligation part." Eunice looked at her grandson. "How do you know?" "Because he said it last," Caleb said. "People who don't mean the no obligation part say it first, so they get credit for it. He said the other things first and the no obligation part last, which means it was an afterthought, not a performance." Eunice looked at him for a long moment. Then she picked up her tea. "Get dressed," she said. Wear the blue shirt. The offices of Pembridge Capital were on the 38th floor of a building on Whitfield Avenue, 2 blocks from the corner where Caleb had been standing with his cardboard sign the day before. The lobby had marble floors, and a ceiling that was higher than the dry cleaner's building was tall. There was a security desk and 2 elevators, and a woman at the reception who smiled at Eunice and Caleb with the kind of smile that was the same for everyone, the practiced professional warmth of a person whose job required it. Eunice walked across the marble floor with her particular careful gait, the gait of a woman who had made her peace with how long things took and moved through the world accordingly. Caleb walked beside her and slightly behind, the position he had learned instinctively, because from slightly behind he could see if she was going to need his arm without her having to ask for it. In the elevator, Eunice straightened his collar. He let her. Pembridge was waiting in a conference room, not the large formal kind, a smaller one with a round table and 4 chairs and a window looking out over the city. He stood when they came in, and he shook Eunice's hand first with both of his, and he said, "Mrs. Osei, thank you for coming." Eunice looked at him with the specific assessment of a woman who had spent 21 years reading people across institutional counters and laundry tables. Then she said, "Thank you for asking us." They sat. Pembridge sat across from them. He had brought coffee and tea and a plate of things that Caleb did not eat, because eating in this room felt like a distraction from what he was paying attention to. "I told you yesterday about the document," Pembridge said, looking at Eunice. "I want to tell you more, because I think Caleb deserves to understand fully what he recovered." He told them about the agreement. He told them about his business partner, a man named Gerald Whitfield, who had been his partner for 31 years, who had built things with him and argued with him, and who, in the past year, had been the target of a campaign by a third party to destroy his reputation using a document that had been misrepresented and taken out of context. The document in the leather case was the original in full, with the full context intact, which Gerald Whitfield's lawyers had spent 3 months locating, and which Pembridge had been carrying from a meeting with those lawyers when Thomas Rain had lifted it from under his arm. If Rain had delivered it to the person who hired him, that person would have destroyed the original and used a doctored copy, one that had been circulating for months, as the definitive version. Gerald Whitfield would have had no recourse. The partnership would have collapsed. The legal exposure for both of them would have been significant. "Your grandson," Pembridge said to Eunice, "recovered the original, with his hands." He looked at Caleb. "I want you to understand that clearly. What you did yesterday was not a small thing." Caleb looked at the table. He looked at his hands, which were slightly less red today than yesterday. "The man who hired Rain," Caleb said. "Do you know who it is now?" "We have a very strong idea," Pembridge said. "The document itself contains information that narrows it considerably. My lawyers and Gerald's lawyers are working on it." He paused. "It will become a legal matter. It is already becoming one." "And Gerald Whitfield," Caleb said. "Does he know?" "I called him last night," Pembridge said, "after I called your grandmother this morning." He looked at the window. "We have had, as I told you, our difficulties. 31 years is a long time, long enough for difficulties." He paused. "He cried on the phone. A man I have known for 31 years. He cried." He was quiet for a moment. I had forgotten that he was capable of that. The room was quiet. Eunice looked at Pembridge with the steady attention she gave to all things. Then she said, "My grandson ran after a man twice his size on a street he didn't know because he saw something wrong happen. He was alone. He was scared. He did it anyway." She looked at Caleb and back at Pembridge. "That's who raised him to be." Pembridge looked at her. I know, he said. I could tell, from the first thing he said to me, who raised him. Eunice sat with that for a moment. Then Pembridge placed a folder on the table between them. I want to tell you what I'd like to do, he said. And I mean what I told your grandmother on the phone. There is no obligation. None. What Caleb did yesterday was not a transaction. I am not buying anything, and he is not owed anything in a contractual sense. He looked at Caleb. But I am a man who has spent 40 years understanding the difference between things that are merely legal and things that are right. And the right thing, when a 10-year-old boy risks his safety to recover something irreplaceable that belongs to you, is to make sure that 10-year-old boy has what he needs. He opened the folder. Inside was a single page, plain, typed, no letterhead. It outlined 3 things. First, a trust fund established in Caleb's name to be used for educational expenses from this point forward, funded at a level that would cover any school, any university, any path he chose. Second, a monthly amount, modest but consistent, directed to Eunice's account for household expenses, for as long as she needed it. Third, and Caleb read this twice to make sure he understood it, a position, when Caleb was old enough, at Pembridge Capital, should he want it. Not a gift, a job, earned. Caleb read the page. He looked at his grandmother. Eunice was reading it too, carefully, line by line, the way she read everything. When she finished, she looked up at Pembridge. The monthly amount, she said. It says for as long as needed. Who decides when it's no longer needed? You do, Pembridge said. Eunice looked at him. You'd trust us with that. Mrs. O'Say, Pembridge said. Your grandson grabbed the strap of a bag being held by a man twice his size and did not let go. I think the O'Say family can be trusted to know when they need something and when they don't. Eunice was quiet for a long moment. She looked at the page. She looked at Caleb. She looked at the window and the city beyond it, and then she looked back at Pembridge. The position, she said, when Caleb is old enough. That's not charity. No, Pembridge said. It's an investment. I've been making investments for 40 years. I know one when I see it. Eunice nodded once. She folded her hands on the table. We'll accept, she said, with gratitude, and with the understanding that Caleb earns the position when the time comes. He doesn't take what he hasn't worked for. She looked at Caleb. That's how we do things. Yes, ma'am, Caleb said. Pembridge looked at the boy across the round table, the blue shirt, the careful posture, the hands with the fading red marks across the palms. Caleb, he said, I want to ask you something. Yes, sir. Yesterday, on the corner, before any of this, when you saw what happened, in the moment before you decided to run, what were you thinking? Caleb considered this. He thought about the corner, the cardboard sign, the wait of the morning, which had been long and cold, and had produced less than he had hoped. He thought about the gray coat and the hand, and the practiced economy of the theft, and the half-second in which everything had balanced. I thought, he said slowly, that I didn't know what was in the bag. I thought it might be nothing important. I thought the man it belonged to probably had more bags. I thought it would cost me whatever money I might have earned standing there the rest of the afternoon. He paused. And then I thought that none of that was the point. The point was that I had seen it. And my grandmother says that seeing something and doing nothing makes you part of it. He looked at his hands. I didn't want to be part of it. Pembridge looked at him for a long time. Then he said, Neither do I. He closed the folder. That's the only reason I'm still doing this after 40 years, because I didn't want to be part of the wrong things. He paused. It's harder than it sounds. I know, Caleb said, but Grandma says it gets easier. She says the more times you do it, the more it becomes the only thing you know how to do. Eunice looked at her grandson. She did not say anything, but her expression said everything it needed to say. On the bus home, because Eunice had said thank you to the offer of the car and had said they would take the bus, because the bus was how they got home, and there was nothing wrong with the bus. Caleb sat beside his grandmother in the seat behind the driver and watched the city move past the window in reverse, the financial district sliding away behind them, Whitfield Avenue receding, the buildings shortening, the streets narrowing back into the streets he knew. His grandmother was looking at her hands in her lap. "Grandma," he said, "the position, when I'm old enough. Do you think I'll want it?" Eunice looked at the window. Then she looked at him. "I think," she said carefully, "that by the time you're old enough, you'll have a very clear idea of what you want. And I think whatever it is, you'll work for it the way you work for everything." She paused. "The position is a door. Doors are useful. What you do when you get through one is up to you." Caleb nodded. He looked at the window. At the corner of Prentice Street, appearing ahead, the dry cleaner's sign, the narrow building, the 3 floors, the stairs that smelled of cleaning chemicals. Home. He thought about the strap in his hands, the pavement under his feet, the flapping tape on his shoe, the weight of a leather case that had belonged to someone else and that he had held onto because letting go had not felt like something he was able to do. He thought about his grandmother's hands on the damp cloth against his palms. He thought, the things that are worth more than money. He thought, she was right. She was always right. The bus stopped. They got off. They walked home.